Have you ever felt that sort of invisible force, maybe a nagging feeling that just holds you back from really diving into a dream? Maybe it's launching that passion project or sticking to a new habit, even just taking that first crucial step towards something, deep down you're meant to do.
Yeah.
That essential calling, it kind of whispers to you, yet you find yourself, well, paralyzed, unable to move forward.
It's a strikingly universal experience, isn't it? That internal friction you feel.
Totally.
Almost like an unseen antagonist sort of working against your best intentions, often without you even fully realizing what's happening.
Yeah, it's not just like laziness.
No, it's more than just simple laziness. It's something far more subtle and powerful.
Absolutely, that internal fiction. It can be incredibly subtle, yeah, but undeniably potent. And that's precisely what we're going to unpack today. We're looking at how one really transformative book sheds light on this whole phenomenon.
Right.
We're taking a deep dive into Steven Pressfield's The War of Art, Winning the Inner Creative Battle.
Great book.
It really is. And this isn't just a book you read. It feels like one you experience, A profound guide that helps us understand the unseen forces at play in our creative lives, our personal journeys.
In Pressfield, he's a veteran writer himself, so he understands this struggle intimately. He identifies this powerful, insidious enemy that sabotages our most important endeavors.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive is kind of multifaceted. We want to clearly define this enemy, understand its many disguises, and most importantly, equip you with actionable insights to conquer it.
Yeah, it's about doing something with it.
Exactly. This isn't just theory. It's about practical strategies for implementing its profound lessons. We want to make these concepts easy and fun to understand, uncover their deeper meaning, and ultimately enlighten and motivate you, our listener, to overcome your own personal and creative battles.
Okay, so let's start right there at the beginning. What does Pressfield actually call this invisible adversary? What's the core concept he introduces?
He gives it this singular, really powerful name: resistance.
Resistance, okay.
Yeah. Pressfield uses this term as an all-encompassing concept for, well, what Sigmund Freud famously called the death wish. That often unconscious drive towards self-destruction or regression or just pulling back from life. Pressfield brilliantly applies this to our creative and personal avoidance patterns.
So it's that destructive, negative force inside us.
Exactly. Within human nature. And it invariably rises up whenever we consider a challenging long-term course of action, especially one that is ultimately good for us or, for others.
And it often manifests as something we're all too familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
The creative block, that paralysis, right? The empty page, the frozen brush, the silence where the music should be.
Spot on. And Robert McKee, who actually wrote the foreword to The War of Art, shares this perfect, almost comically relatable anecdote about this very thing.
Oh, yeah. What's the story?
Well, he describes himself as holding Olympic records for procrastination.
Think I might compete there.
Right. He said he could even procrastinate thinking about his procrastination problem.
That's meta.
Totally. He shared this absurd story of being so utterly blocked, so desperate to avoid the actual work of writing, that he spent 2 full days trying on all his clothes.
No way. 2 days.
2 full days. And not just trying them on once. Oh, no. He was sorting them into piles like spring, summer, fall, winter, then trying them on again to sort them into spring casual, spring formal.
Wow. That's dedication to avoidance.
It sounds ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But it perfectly illustrates how far resistance can push us into self-sabotage, into just trivial busy work, simply to avoid the discomfort of true creation.
It's astonishing, isn't it? The sheer lengths our minds will go to avoid that discomfort, avoid our deepest calling. So if procrastination is resistance's favorite disguise, its #1 hit, what are some of its other greatest hits, the ones that often hide in plain sight in our daily lives?
Well, procrastination is definitely its most common manifestation and the easiest to rationalize.
Oh, yeah. I'll start tomorrow.
Exactly. I'll write that symphony later. The insidious part, Pressfield points out, is that this habit can become so ingrained that we put off our lives not just for a day, but potentially until our deathbed.
That's a really powerful and sobering thought. It makes you think about what you're putting off right now.
It does. But Pressfield offers an equally powerful counterstatement, which is key for implementing change. He says, this very moment, we can change our lives.
Yeah.
We can sit down and do our work.
Right now. That immediate agency, that power of the present moment, that's what resistance tries so hard to steal from us.
Precisely. And it employs a whole arsenal of tactics to do it. often disguised as distractions or, forms of self-sabotage.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Okay, consider something like an obsessive preoccupation with sex, or really any cheap, easy fix.
Okay.
It's not about judging the activity itself, but more about when it becomes a distraction from the work that truly matters.
The why behind it.
Exactly. The telltale sign, Pressfield notes, is the measure of hollowness you feel afterward.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. And this principle extends broadly. Think drugs, compulsive shopping, endless TV binging, idle gossip, excessive alcohol, even junk food. Anything that provides that immediate superficial gratification to pull us away from our true calling, especially when we're feeling that internal pull towards something deeper.
Yeah, that hollowness. It's like a fleeting high that just leaves you emptier than before, almost more restless somehow.
That's it exactly.
What about seeking trouble or self-dramatization? That seems like a particularly, bizarre yet sadly familiar way resistance shows up.
It is bizarre, but you see it. Pressfield explains that people often create drama in their lives as a kind of faux form of fame.
Like manufactured importance.
Yeah, a way to get attention without doing the hard, often solitary work of creation. He gives these vivid examples like getting busted in the bedroom or bringing home a boyfriend with a prison record. Things that generate immediate high-stakes attention and keep you perpetually distracted.
It's easier to manage a crisis than write a chapter.
Right. It's easier to create a soap opera in your life than to finish a dissertation or launch that business. And what's even more fascinating, or maybe disturbing, is how entire families can unconsciously participate in this soap opera.
Really? Like a group effort in avoidance?
Kind of, creating a culture where nobody gets a damn thing done. Pressfield even humorously describes resistance as this evil twin to Santa Claus who checks, not if you've been good, but if you've not been doing your work. And he gleefully moves on when he sees a household totally hooked on self-dramatization.
Wow. So it's a way to avoid the real work by creating this compelling, albeit destructive diversion. And then there's the link to self-medication and victimhood. That feels particularly relevant today with all the talk about mental well-being.
Absolutely. And Pressfield has a truly provocative take here, drawing from his old advertising days. He recounts this anecdote where his boss used to say, invent a disease, come up with a disease, we could sell a cure.
Oof, that's cynical.
It is. And he argues that conditions like, say, attention deficit disorder, seasonal affective disorder, or social anxiety disorder, while their symptoms can be very real for people.
Right. Need to be clear on that.
Absolutely. But they can also function as marketing ploys by, say, drug companies. This is what he calls resistance and commerce at work, where industries profit from our unhappiness by offering a product instead of encouraging, genuine self-knowledge or discipline or the hard work needed to address the root cause of our inner turmoil.
Okay, that's definitely a provocative assertion. Some listeners might find that quite controversial. Is he actually dismissing the validity of these conditions entirely, or is it more nuanced?
That's a really crucial distinction. He's not dismissing the reality of suffering, not at all. But he's pointing out how cultivating an illness or a condition can become a shadow version of the real creative act the victim is avoiding.
Okay, so it becomes an excuse, almost.
It can, yeah. It could be a form of passive aggression, maybe manipulating others to come to your rescue or do what you want, all to avoid doing the challenging work that you are meant to do. It's like an antithesis to genuine creation, a way to justify inaction. The professional, he argues, simply won't tolerate trouble or self-pity in their lives because it prevents them from doing their work.
Okay, that makes more sense. It's about how we use the condition in relation to our work.
Exactly.
And what about criticism and self-doubt? These feel like internal battles, but Pressfield connects criticizing others to our own resistance. How does that work?
It's a really powerful insight, actually. When we see other people starting to live their authentic selves, pursuing their calling, it can drive us crazy if we haven't lived out our own.
Jealousy, basically.
Or something deeper. Pressfield observes that individuals who are realized in their own lives almost never criticize others. Instead, they offer encouragement because they understand the struggle.
That's a great point for implementing these lessons. Turn that critical eye inwards.
Exactly. Ask yourself, where am I resisting my own calling? And surprisingly, self-doubt itself. Pressfield says it can actually be an ally.
Really? How? Self-doubt feels like the enemy.
Well, he argues it's an indicator of aspiration. It reflects love and desire for what you truly want to do. If you're asking, am I really a writer? Or am I good enough for this new venture? Chances are you are. The counterfeit innovator, the poseur, is often wildly self-confident. But the real one, the one on the cusp of something great, is often scared to death.
Wow, that completely reframes self-doubt. It's not a stop sign. It's a compass pointing toward what truly matters to you.
Precisely. That fear means it's important.
What about that pervasive sense of unhappiness, that low-grade misery so many people seem to feel?
Yeah, that background hum of boredom, restlessness, guilt, feeling unloved. Pressfield argues that if resistance goes unalleviated, it can mount to this unendurable pitch. And that can lead to vices, then clinical depression, aggression, crime, even physical self-destruction.
Serious consequences.
He states it flatly. It isn't life. It's resistance. He even brings in a quote from John Lennon, with his famously blunt take on consumer culture.
Oh, yeah.
About figging peasants, enslaved by it, urging an internal revolution against it. It's about recognizing that our restlessness often can only be cured by doing our work, not by consuming more products from what Pressfield bluntly calls bullshit Inc.
Bullshit Inc. Okay.
Essentially, industries that profit by selling us these fleeting distractions instead of encouraging true self-knowledge and, crucially, action.
Wow. So it's not just about finishing your novel or painting. It's about our very well-being, our mental and spiritual health.
Deeply connected.
Which brings us to this core idea he talks about, the unlived life.
This is truly central to Pressfield's message. And it's a concept that I think resonates really deeply with people. He says, most of us have two lives, the life we live and the unlived life within us. Between the two stands resistance.
The life we live and the unlived life, that's powerful.
And he uses these really relatable examples. The treadmill gathering dust in the corner, quitting a diet after 3 days, not pursuing that calling to be a devoted mother or a compassionate doctor or an advocate for change. He asks, have you ever had that late-night vision of the person you could become, the work you could accomplish, the realized being you were meant to be?
Yeah.
If you have, then you know resistance.
Yeah.
Because it's what's preventing you from embodying that vision.
It's that still small voice, isn't it? The one whispering your calling, but year after year, you're no closer to actually acting on it.
That's it.
And then he brings up this powerful, almost chilling story about cancer remission. This really drives home the stakes involved.
Yes, the story of the woman who learns she has 6 months to live. She quits her job, finally pursues her dream, maybe writing Tex-Mex songs or studying classical Greek, and she's never been happier. Then, miraculously, her cancer goes into remission. Pressfield poses the hard question. Do we have to stare death in the face to make us stand up and confront resistance? It's a powerful motivator for the listener, for you, to consider your own still small voice and confront what you are truly meant to do, rather than letting resistance deform your spirit.
It makes you think, what are we waiting for?
Exactly. He even speculates, maybe half-jokingly, that if everyone woke up tomorrow and actually pursued their dreams, industries like healthcare, alcohol, tobacco, maybe even prisons would be out of business. Because so much suffering stems from that unlived life.
And then, to really underscore the sheer destructive potential of this force, Pressfield goes to an extreme, maybe even provocative example to illustrate the truly catastrophic potential of unchecked resistance. He brings up Hitler.
Yeah, it's a chilling and deeply uncomfortable comparison, isn't it? But his intention isn't political. It's purely illustrative of resistance's immense destructive power when it's allowed to fester.
Okay, so what's the connection he makes?
He points out that Hitler, as a young man, wanted to be an artist. He moved to Vienna at 18 to study art. But as Pressfield provocatively suggests, it was easier for Hitler to start World War II than it was for him to face a blank square of canvas.
Wow, that's a heavy statement.
It is. And again, it's not meant as a historical judgment on the causes of the war. It's a metaphor. It highlights the immense, almost unthinkable lengths. Resistance can push someone when that impulse to create, to manifest one's true calling, is suppressed and twisted. It emphasizes the profound importance of doing your work, of engaging in that inner creative battle, because the alternative can be truly catastrophic for the individual and by extension for the world.
That's a really stark way to drive home the point. The consequences of an unlived life can be devastating. So, okay, we understand resistance is this formidable enemy. What are its fundamental characteristics? What does Pressfield tell us about its nature that helps us understand how to combat it?
Right. He outlined several key traits. First, resistance is invisible. You can't see it, touch it, smell it, but you can definitely feel it.
It's like a force field.
Yeah, like a repelling negative energy. It's there specifically to shove you away from your work. Second, it's profoundly internal.
So we can't blame external factors.
Well, we do, often. Spouses, bosses, kids. But Pressfield insists resistance arises from within. It is self-generated and self-perpetuated. It's truly the enemy within.
And it's insidious, right? It lies, it fabricates excuses, it whispers doubt.
Precisely. Resistance will tell you anything to keep you from doing your work. It lies, it fabricates, it seduces, it bullies. It's protean, shape-shifting, taking any form necessary to deceive you. Pressfield warns, very bluntly, resistance is always lying and always full of shit.
Okay, clear enough.
You just cannot trust it. Its sole purpose is to stop you, period.
And he describes it as implacable and impersonal, almost like a force of nature, you said.
That's his analogy, yeah. He compares it to the alien or the Terminator or the shark in Jaws.
Relentless.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It cannot be reasoned with. It understands nothing but power. It is an engine of destruction. Reducing it to a single cell won't stop it. Yet, paradoxically, it's not personal.
No.
It doesn't care who you are. It's a force of nature, acting objectively, like rain. It hits everyone.
And understanding that is crucial for implementing the lessons, right? Because it means you're not uniquely flawed or cursed.
Exactly. You're not battling some personal demon unique to you. You're facing a universal force that everyone struggles with. That realization can be incredibly freeing. It means you're not alone in this fight.
Okay, so if resistance is so invisible and insidious, how do we even begin to detect it? Or maybe even use it to our advantage? Does Pressfield offer a kind of tell? A way to spot it?
He absolutely does, and this is a real key insight for implementing the lessons. Resistance is infallible.
Infallible? How so?
Pressfield describes it as being like a magnetized needle. It will unfailingly point to true north, meaning that calling or action it most wants to stop us from doing.
So the thing you're most afraid of doing.
Is probably the thing you most need to do. The more fear you feel about an enterprise, the more important it likely is to your soul's growth. Resistance becomes a compass, indicating where your deepest work lies.
That's fascinating. He gives an example.
Yeah, from inside the actor's studio. He notes that actors invariably choose roles they are afraid of, precisely because those roles will make them stretch and grow. So if you're paralyzed with fear about starting something, a book, a business, a difficult conversation, that fear is actually a good sign. It shows you what you have to do.
So fear isn't a red light, it's more like a flashing green light, pointing you exactly where you need to go.
That's a great way to put it.
And resistance is also universal and never sleeps, meaning this battle is, well, it's ongoing, it's daily.
It truly is. Everyone experiences it, even the most seasoned professionals. Pressfield mentions Henry Fonda, who, at 75 years old, was still throwing up before each stage performance because of nerves.
Wow, at 75.
Yeah, fear doesn't just magically vanish when you achieve success. The battle has to be fought anew every single day, and resistance plays for keeps. Its goal isn't just to wound you or slow you down. Its aim is to kill your unique gift, your genius, your authentic contribution to the world. It's a war to the death, metaphorically speaking.
But there's a vulnerability there, isn't there? He says it's fueled by fear, our fear.
Yes, its strength comes entirely from your fear of it. Master that fear, Pressfield says, and we conquer resistance. This understanding is incredibly empowering because it means the power to disarm it is ultimately ours to reclaim.
Okay, that's hopeful.
And there's more. It only opposes upward movement. Resistance only kicks in when you seek to evolve to reach a higher station, morally, ethically, or spiritually.
What about moving downwards?
If you're abandoning a noble pursuit for something lower, say, quitting charity work to become a telemarketer, resistance actually gives you a free pass. It encourages downward regression, paradoxically, because that serves its ultimate purpose of keeping you from becoming your true self.
That's a wild concept, like a dark angel guiding you away from growth, and it's apparently most powerful at the finish line. What's the danger there?
He uses this great analogy from Homer's Odyssey. Odysseus is almost home, almost reached Ithaca, but his men, out of suspicion or greed, open the bag containing the adverse winds given to him by Aeolus, and boom, they're blown all the way back out into the storm.
Just when they could see the shore.
Exactly. The danger is greatest when the goal is in sight. Resistance knows you're about to beat it, so it hits the panic button, launching one final all-out assault. Doubts flare up, distractions multiply, self-sabotage beckons. The professional must be wary and not open that bag of wind.
This is such a critical part for implementing sustained effort, seeing things through to the end.
Don't fumble on the 1-yard line.
Basically, yeah.
And then the last one, it recruits allies. This sounds particularly nasty, and maybe personal even if resistance itself isn't.
It feels personal, doesn't it? When you start to overcome your own resistance, when you actually begin to do your work, people close to you, friends, family, might start acting strangely. How so?
They might get moody, or suddenly get sick, or accuse you of changing in a negative way. Pressfield calls this unconscious sabotage. These allies are often struggling deeply with their own resistance, and your success, your progress, becomes a kind of reproach to them. If you can beat your demons, why can't they?
The crab in the bucket mentality, pulling you back down.
Precisely. And Pressfield's advice here is stark, maybe even harsh, but very clear for implementing your path forward. You must be ruthless. Once you make your break, you can't turn around for your buddy. The best thing you can do for that friend is to get over the wall and keep motivating, keep moving forward. The only real help one artist can give another is to serve as an example and an inspiration by doing their own work.
Wow. Tough love, but maybe necessary.
Can be.
Okay, so if resistance is this formidable, omnipresent enemy with all these tricks, how do we actually combat it? How do we implement strategies for victory and transform ourselves into someone who can consistently do the work? This brings us nicely to part 2, combating resistance, turning pro.
Yes. And this is where Pressfield introduces a really profound paradigm shift, turning pro. It isn't primarily about getting paid, though that could be part of it. It's an epical moment for an artist or anyone pursuing a calling, a pivotal, life-changing decision. He actually divides his own life story into before turning pro and after. That's how fundamental this shift in mindset is. It's about changing your internal identity.
And he really challenges the conventional definition of amateur versus professional, doesn't he? We usually think, oh, amateur means you love the game and pro means you do it for money. But he flips that.
He totally flips it. Pressfield argues that the amateur does not love the game enough.
Ouch.
Yeah. If they truly loved their calling, he suggests, they wouldn't pursue it as just a sideline, something to dabble in when they feel like it. The professional, in his view, loves it so much they commit their life to it full time, making it their primary focus and identity. That's the commitment, not necessarily the paycheck.
So it's about dedication, not compensation.
Exactly. And resistance hates it when we turn pro, because that decision, that level of commitment, signifies something powerful that begins to disarm away. Resistance's hold on you.
He illustrates this beautifully with that Somerset Maugham quote. What was it again?
Oh, it's classic. I write only when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes every morning at 9 o'clock sharp.
Ah, I love that. It's such a clever, witty way to make a really deep point.
It perfectly encapsulates the professional's discipline, doesn't it? Maugham understood that by simply performing the mundane physical act of sitting down and starting to work, he set in motion this mysterious but infallible sequence of events that would produce inspiration. He knew if he built it, she would come, referring to the muse, of course.
Right. The muse shows up when you do.
That's the idea. So the key here for implementing this lesson is consistent, disciplined action. Regardless of how you feel, how inspired you are, or what doubts resistance might be whispering in your ear, you just show up every day.
Okay, so beyond that core commitment, what are these practical habits? These qualities of a professional that lead to victory over resistance. What does it truly mean to adopt this professional mindset and, more importantly, put it into practice daily?
Well, the bedrock, the absolute foundational principle is simply this. Show up every day, no matter what.
Every single day.
Every single day you intend to work. Pressfield describes his own writer's day. Waking with that gnawing dissatisfaction and fear, feeling resistance in his guts, respecting it as a signal, but showing up anyway. He might do chores, but the clock is ticking, and he knows he has to cut them off to get to the important work. This consistent presence, even when facing fear or dissatisfaction, builds the muscle you need.
That's the principle of priority he talks about, isn't it? Knowing the difference between what feels urgent and what is truly important, and consistently choosing to do the important work first.
Precisely. The work is the game, and you have to suit up for it whether you feel like it or not. Another quality, maybe a bit counterintuitive, is embracing misery.
Embracing misery. That sounds unpleasant.
It does. But Pressfield recounts his time in the Marine Corps, explaining that boot camp basically taught him how to be miserable. And he argues this is invaluable for an artist or anyone facing a tough challenge. You will face isolation, rejection, self-doubt, maybe even humiliation.
Yeah, the creative path isn't always easy.
Rarely is. The professional learns to almost love being miserable, not in a masochistic way, but in the sense of finding pride and even a perverse kind of comfort in enduring the struggle, knowing, okay, this is war, baby, and war is hell. It's about enduring the process, the grind, not just celebrating the eventual outcome.
That's a tough pill to swallow, maybe, but it makes profound sense. If you can endure discomfort and just keep persisting, you become incredibly resilient.
Absolutely.
And here's a really motivating point he makes, something that often gets overlooked. We're all pros already in some area of our lives.
This is such a brilliant insight for implementing these ideas because it reframes what you already do every day. Pressfield says we're all professionals in at least one area, our regular jobs. Think about it. At work, most of us show up every day, whether we feel like it or not. We stay on the job all day. We're committed long term. The stakes, like getting paid, keeping the job, are real. We accept payment for our labor. We generally don't over-identify with our jobs. We can leave them at the door. We master the necessary techniques. We hopefully have a sense of humor about the frustrations. And we receive real-world feedback, like performance reviews or customer reactions.
Okay, yeah, when you list it like that.
The profound insight here isn't just that you can be a pro in your art or your calling, but that you already possess the wiring for discipline and commitment from your day job. You just need to redirect that existing professionalism towards your true work.
That's incredibly empowering. We already have the tools.
Exactly. The amateur, in contrast, doesn't show up consistently for their art. They over-identify with it, which paralyzes them with fear of failure or imperfection. They avoid real-world judgment. As Pressfield says, the amateur often doesn't write his trilogy at all, precisely because they fail to apply these existing professional qualities to their passion.
That's such a clear distinction. And yeah, incredibly motivating knowing we already have these capacities within us. He has a really funny but also painful anecdote about his first professional writing failure that illustrates this point about real-world validation.
Oh, the King Kong Lim story. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So Pressfield and his writing partner thought their screenplay was going to be a huge hit. They invited everyone they knew to the premiere, even rented a place for a massive after party.
Oh, dear. I sense where this is going.
Yeah. Pretty much nobody showed up to the party. The Review and Variety, the industry Bible, read Ronald Shusett and Stephen Pressfield. We hope these are not their real names for their parents' sake.
Ouch, brutal.
Devastating. He was crushed, felt like a total loser. But his friend, Tony Keppelman, asked him the crucial question, are you going to quit? And Pressfield, even through his pain and humiliation, said, hell no.
Good for him.
And Tony replied, then be happy. You're where you wanted to be, aren't you? So you're taking a few blows. That's the price for being in the arena and not on the sidelines. Stop complaining and be grateful.
Wow, what a friend.
Right. And Pressfield said that was the moment he realized he had actually become a pro. Not because he'd had a success, but because he had had a real failure, a public flop. This is such a crucial lesson in implementation. Failure isn't the end. It's often a sign you're truly in the game, a sign of your professional commitment. You showed up, you put it out there, you took the hit.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. Failure as a badge of honor, almost. A necessary rite of passage for the pro.
Exactly.
And the lunch pail mentality he talks about ties into this, doesn't it? This idea of playing for money, even just adopting the attitude of playing for money as a way to kind of lower the fever of too much preciousness about the work?
Yes, precisely. The idea is that adopting the attitude of someone who works for money, even if you're not currently getting paid for your art, lowers that fever of overinvestment, enabling a necessary detachment. It fosters humility. You think of yourself as a mercenary, a gun for hire.
Not necessarily in a bad way.
No, in a practical way. It purges pride and preciousness, which resistance absolutely loves because those things paralyze you with fear of imperfection. The writer, he says, is like an infantryman who knows progress is measured in yards and often paid for in blood, sweat, and tears. This attitude helps you show up and just slug it out day after day, focusing on the work itself, regardless of the immediate outcome or how you feel about it.
Okay, so showing up daily is the foundation. What are some of the other, maybe less obvious, but equally crucial attributes that Pressfield says really define a professional? You mentioned patience earlier.
Patience is absolutely key. Resistance often makes us wildly overambitious in the short term. It pushes us to create unrealistic timelines, demand immediate results, get frustrated when things take time.
Yeah, we want it now.
Exactly. The professional, however, understands and embraces delayed gratification. They are the ant, not the grasshopper, the tortoise, not the hare. They accept that any significant job, whether it's writing a novel or building a business or even remodeling a home, almost always takes twice as long as he thinks and costs twice as much.
The rule of thumb for any project.
Right. They prepare their mind for the Iditarod, not the 60-yard dash. They conserve energy for the long haul. This is such a fundamental lesson for implementing any long-term creative project. Don't put out in the first week.
And what about seeking order, eliminating chaos from one's life? This seems less about the creative act itself and more about the environment surrounding it.
But it's deeply connected. Pressfield tells this story about when he lived in his messy Chevy van, how he had to literally dig his typewriter out from under layers of junk just to start working. The professional, he says, cannot live like that.
Creates too much friction.
Exactly. They eliminate chaos from their world and their mind, so the muse may enter and not soil her gown. It's about creating an environment, both physical and mental, that is conducive to deep, focused work. Clearing space, literally and figuratively, for inspiration to actually show up and be heard. Okay, that makes sense. Then he talks about demystifying the craft. What does that mean for an artist, someone who often deals with intangible things like inspiration? A pro views their work primarily as craft, not just purely ephemeral art. Now, this isn't to deny the mystical dimension, the role of inspiration, but dwelling on that mystery, waiting around for a bolt of lightning from the heavens, can paralyze you. Waiting for the muse. Right. So the pro focuses on technique, the how, and leaves the what and why, to some extent, to the gods. They don't wait passively for inspiration. They act in anticipation of it, knowing that consistent action often invokes inspiration. The amateur, conversely, tends to overglorify the mystery, sometimes using it as a convenient excuse for inaction. The professional shuts up. She doesn't talk about it. She does her work.
Get your hands dirty with the process.
That's it. This is a key implementation point. Focus on the process, on the tangible steps you can take now, not just the grand, elusive outcome you hope for later.
Which leads directly to acting in the face of fear. If fear is always present, even for pros like Henry Fonda, how does the professional simply push through it day after day?
The amateur often believes they must somehow overcome fear before they can start working. They wait until they feel brave or confident.
Which might be never.
Often never. The professional knows fear can never be truly overcome, not permanently. There's no such thing as a fearless warrior or a dread-free artist. So, like Henry Fonda, who would apparently clean up after puking from nerves and still march onto the stage, the pro forces themselves forward despite the terror. They know that once he gets out into the action, his fear will recede. The action itself becomes the antidote to the fear, the only reliable way to move past it.
Do the thing and you'll get the power.
Something like that, yes. It's a core implementation strategy for any ambitious endeavor you feel fear around. Just start.
And the professional accepts no excuses. That sounds like a tough standard to hold yourself to, day in, day out.
It is, but Pressfield argues it's essential. Resistance is incredibly cunning, always ready with a plausible-sounding pretext for skipping work today. I'm too tired, I have a headache, the conditions aren't right, I need to do more research.
Heard them all, used them all.
Huh? We all have. The pro knows that if they cave in today, even with a seemingly valid reason, they'll be twice as likely to cave in tomorrow. Pressfield compares resistance to a telemarketer. If you so much as say hello, engage with the excuse, you're finished. He reminds us that Tolstoy had 13 kids and still wrote War and Peace, and Lance Armstrong famously had cancer and won the Tour de France multiple times. Excuses are just resistance's way of hiding the underlying fear and keeping you from reaching your potential.
Okay, no excuses. Got it. They also play it as it lays. Embrace reality, warts and all.
Yes. Accepting the real world and its unpredictable, often unfair nature. He tells that story about playing golf in Scotland, where the wind just grabbed his perfect drive and blew it completely off course into the gorse. His old Scottish caddy just shrugged and said, "Well, you got to play the wind now, don't you?"
Accept the conditions.
Exactly. The professional understands that adversity, injustice, bad hops, and rotten calls are simply part of the playing field. The field is level only in heaven, Pressfield jokes. You don't waste energy complaining, you deal with what's actually in front of you. This fosters resilience and a crucial practicality.
And they're always prepared, not just technically, but mentally, for the internal battle itself.
Yes. Beyond just mastering their craft, they are mentally prepared to confront their own tendencies toward self-sabotage. Resistance is fertile and ingenious. It's constantly throwing new challenges, new doubts, new fears your way. The professional is ready to absorb blows and deliver blows, to be prudent and prepared to be reckless, as he puts it.
Yeah.
Their goal isn't necessarily victory in every single skirmish against resistance, but to handle themselves sturdily and steadily, focusing on winning the long war.
This connects to what you said about not showing off and instead dedicating oneself to mastering technique.
Absolutely. A professional style serves the material, not their own ego. They don't grandstand. Their ego doesn't dictate their artistic choices, and they deeply respect their craft, dedicating themselves to mastering technique. Not because technique is a substitute for inspiration or genius, but because they want to have a full arsenal of skills ready for when inspiration does come knocking. The professional is sly, Pressfield says. By toiling beside the front door of technique, he leaves room for genius to enter by the back. Mastery of craft creates the vessel, the container, for the divine spark.
I like that image. And despite their dedication to mastery, they don't hesitate to ask for help. That seems counterintuitive to the romantic archetype of the lone, struggling artist.
It's a really powerful distinction he makes. The ultimate example he gives is Tiger Woods, who, even at the absolute peak of his game, arguably the greatest golfer the world had ever seen, was still working diligently with a swing coach, Butch Harmon, and apparently reveling in the process of learning and improving.
Wow. Even Tiger Woods needed a coach.
Right. This completely counters the amateur's mindset, which often includes the belief that they know everything already or that they can figure it all out alone. The professional recognizes that there are inexhaustible levels of revelation and refinement in any art or discipline, and they humbly seek guidance to continue growing. It's an example of true humility in the relentless pursuit of mastery.
Okay, this next one is fascinating. The professional distances themselves from their instrument. What does that mean exactly, and how is it implemented in practice?
This is about not over-identifying with your person, your body, your voice, your innate talent. It's simply the equipment you were given, the tool you work with. The pro assesses it coolly, impersonally, objectively.
Like a mechanic looking at an engine?
Kind of, yeah. Pressfield uses Madonna as an example. She employs Madonna, the public persona, the brand, the instrument. She doesn't identify with it completely. Her consciousness, her will, runs the show. She objectively assesses her instrument, what's working, what's not, what needs tuning, while maintaining that crucial distance. This detachment allows for critical self-assessment and continuous improvement, preventing ego and vanity from getting in the way of the actual work.
That makes sense. It allows for more objective decisions. And this ties into perhaps one of the most difficult lessons of all. Not taking failure or success personally. Our deepest instincts seem wired to crave approval and fear rejection.
Oh, this takes tremendous strength of character, as Pressfield admits. Our deepest biological and psychological instincts are programmed for tribal inclusion. We fear rejection more than almost anything. We crave validation. But the professional has seated his professional consciousness in a place other than his personal ego.
So critics aren't the real enemy.
No. Resistance is the enemy. The battle is always inside. He brings in the Bhagavad Gita here. We have a right only to our labor, not to the fruits of our labor. The work itself, the act of creation, the engagement with the process, that is the reward, not the external praise or condemnation that might follow.
He has that brilliant example of Tiger Woods again, illustrating this ultimate professional detachment during a high-pressure moment.
Yes, the Masters in 2001, final day. Some chucklehead, as Pressfield calls him, snaps a camera shutter right at the top of Tiger's backswing on a crucial tee shot.
Oh man, the worst timing.
The worst. And incredibly, Tiger manages to stop his swing mid-motion. But the truly amazing part is what he didn't do. He didn't react reflexively with explosive rage, though you could see he was furious. He didn't take it personally, as if it were a deliberate blow aimed just at him. He didn't see it as some sign of malevolence from the universe.
He kept his cool, basically.
More than that. He maintained sovereignty over the moment. He recognized that no matter what blow befell him from the outside, he still had his job to do, which was to hit that shot. He vented his anger quickly with a glare, recomposed himself almost instantly, and then just strike the ball 310 yards right down the middle of the fairway.
Incredible focus.
It demonstrates ultimate self-validation and sovereignty, the mark of a true professional. The pro learns to blow off critics, external distractions, bad luck, knowing they are often just unwitting mouthpieces or manifestations of resistance.
Wow. That's incredible discipline. And related to that, the professional endures adversity. They let the bird shit splash down on his slicker, as he colorfully puts it.
Huh. Yeah. Pressfield recounts this humiliating experience early in his career, waiting for an hour in a producer's hallway, completely forgotten. He says, the professional endures adversity. He lets the bird shit splash down on his slicker, remembering that it comes clean with a heavy-duty hosing. His core, his creative center, is bulletproof. He's like that old guy Pressfield saw with the DDK PD license plate. He understands that paying dues is part of the game. It's better to be in the arena getting stomped by the bull than to be up in the stands or out in the parking lot. It's about showing up, taking the inevitable blows, and just continuing to move forward.
Resilience is key. They also reinvent themselves. That speaks to the long arc of a creative career, doesn't it? Things change.
Absolutely. He quotes Goldie Hawn, who wryly observed there are only 3 ages for an actress in Hollywood: Babe, District Attorney, and Driving Miss Daisy.
Huh. Cynical, but maybe true.
The professional artist recognizes that the muse, or their calling, may have more than one job for them over the course of a lifetime. So they learn to shuck their outworn bodies or personas and don new ones, continuing their journey of expression to different forms. It's about adapting and evolving, staying true to the underlying calling, not getting stuck in a static identity that no longer serves the work.
And finally, this fascinating concept of UINC, using incorporation not just for taxes, but as a mental model for professionalism. How does that help us in practice?
This is a really powerful mental model for implementing professionalism and creating that healthy distance we talked about. Many screenwriters in LA literally incorporate themselves, working as loanouts from their own one-man businesses. Pressfield loves this metaphor because it clearly separates the artist doing the work part of you from the will and consciousness running the show part.
Like being your own boss, literally.
Exactly. This allows for healthy distance and objectivity. You can metaphorically hire yourself, fire yourself if you're slacking, hold Monday morning status meetings with yourself, complete with a worksheet tracking progress. It makes you less subjective, maybe more cold-blooded about the process, allowing you to, as he puts it, pimp the hell out of yourself when needed, pushing your creative output to its limit without getting bogged down in ego or emotion. It's a practical way to embody the pro mindset, to take that necessary distance for optimal performance.
Okay, so we've defined the enemy, resistance. We've adopted the disciplined mindset of a professional, turning pro in our minds. How does resistance ultimately yield? What's the inevitable victory in this ongoing battle?
Pressfield says, quite simply, resistance is a bully. And what do we know about bullies?
They back down when you stand up to them.
Exactly. Its power comes entirely from your fear of it. A bully will back down before the runtiest twerp who stands his ground. The professional beats resistance by being, as he puts it, borrowing from John Wayne's character Ethan Edwards in The Searchers, a quitter that keeps coming.
Relentless pursuit.
Relentless pursuit. Ethan Edwards relentlessly pursues his quarry for years, knowing the fugitive's vigilance will eventually slacken, but his won't. The professional aims to be even more resolute and even more implacable than resistance itself. You just keep showing up.
So it's not some grand mystery defeating it. There's no secret technique.
No. Pressfield is very clear on this. He insists there's no mystery to turning pro. It's a decision brought about by an act of will. We make up our minds to view ourselves as pros, and we do it. Simple as that.
Wow. It's a choice, an intentional shift in identity.
A choice that unlocks immense power, and that offers truly profound motivation. The power lies entirely within your own resolve. You decide.
That's incredibly empowering. Okay, so it's a choice, a commitment. Now let's explore part 3. Beyond resistance, the higher realm. Because Pressfield suggests it's not just about overcoming obstacles through sheer willpower, it's also about invoking something greater, something unseen that supports our endeavors.
Yes. And this is where Pressfield ventures into territory that might make some listeners maybe uncomfortable. He starts using terms like muses and angels.
Right. Which can sound a bit mystical or maybe woo-woo to some.
It can. But he immediately gives you permission to think of them abstractly, if you prefer. As impersonal forces like gravity, maybe? Or as the fundamental instincts within every seed to grow towards the light? Or even simply as talent, programmed into our genes by evolution.
So you don't have to believe in literal angels with wings.
Not at all. The core idea, the deeper meaning he's getting at here, is that there are invisible psychic forces that support and sustain us in our journey, forces we can call our allies. Just as resistance works relentlessly to keep us from becoming who we were born to be, Pressfield believes that equal and opposite powers are counterpoised against it, waiting, ready to assist us if we align ourselves with them.
Okay, so these are our allies, these unseen forces. And the primary way to invoke them to get their help is through the power of work itself. It's not about waiting for them, but acting to bring them forth.
Yes, exactly. He hammers this point home. The most important thing about art is to work. Nothing else matters except sitting down every day and trying. When you do that, he argues, something mysterious starts to happen. A process is set into motion by which, inevitably and infallibly, heaven comes to our aid.
Heaven comes to our aid. How?
Unseen forces seem to enlist. Serendipity starts reinforcing your purpose. When we sit down and work, he says, we become like a magnetized rod that attracts iron filings. Ideas come, insights accrete. Pressfield views professionalism not just as discipline, but as an attitude of egolessness and service, almost like an artist's code or a warrior's way. Think of the Knights of the Round Table battling the fire-breathing griffins of the soul. The very act of showing up, of doing the work consistently, opens the channels for this assistance.
And he even has a personal ritual for this, doesn't he? Invoking the muse every single day before he starts.
He does. He shares his practice of saying a prayer to the muse, specifically Homer's invocation of the muse from the beginning of the Odyssey, using T.E. Lawrence's translation every single day before he starts work. He learned this ritual, along with the importance of discipline, from an old writer friend named Paul Rink. And Pressfield stresses this isn't just superstition, it's a conscious act of alignment, a way of humbling oneself and preparing the mind for reception from these higher forces.
He had a really powerful personal breakthrough related to this level of commitment, didn't he? A story that sounds truly enlightening.
Yes. He tells about being in his late 20s after years of starting novels but always crashing and burning due to resistance. He holed up in a remote cabin in Northern California, absolutely determined to finish one book or, as he dramatically puts it, kill himself trying.
Wow, high stakes.
Very. He had no TV, no newspaper, just worked relentlessly. And one afternoon, he was so deeply immersed in his writing that he completely missed the entire news cycle about the Watergate scandal and Nixon's resignation. He only found out later from a neighbor's radio.
That's incredible focus. That's flow state.
Exactly. It illustrates that profound level of engagement. He worked like that for 26 months straight, taking only 2 months off for migrant farm labor to survive, and finally typed the words, "The End." He describes it as epical moment, feeling like a dragon I'd been fighting all my life had just dropped dead at my feet.
What a feeling that must have been.
Incredible. And even though that particular book didn't sell for years, the personal victory over resistance was immense. But the punchline is great. The very next morning, he excitedly told his mentor, Paul Rank, that he was done. And Paul simply said, "Good for you. Start the next one today."
Back to work. The pro's response.
Always focused on the next iteration of the work. It's a great example of the deeper meaning in persistence. These forces really do seem to rally when we make that unwavering commitment.
Okay, let's delve a bit more into understanding the muses then. What do they represent in this context beyond just ancient Greek mythology?
Well, Pressfield briefly explains the basics. The Greek muses were 9 sisters, daughters of Zeus, king of the gods, and Mnemosyne, goddess of memory, significantly. Their job was to inspire artists, poets, musicians, historians. He quotes Socrates, who spoke of the heaven-sent madness of true poetic inspiration, stating that a poet untouched by the muses, relying only on technical skill, will never reach perfection.
So the ancients acknowledged forces beyond human intellect.
Right. They personified these powerful primordial forces as gods and goddesses, acknowledging forces whose seat was not in this material sphere, but in a loftier, more mysterious one. And Pressfield challenges the modern cynical view that this is just charming but preposterous by asking simply, where did Hamlet come from? Where did the Parthenon come from? Implying a source beyond mere human intellect or technique.
Good question. And then he brings in William Blake's visionary idea. Eternity is in love with the creations of time. That's quite poetic. What's the deeper meaning he finds there?
This really deepens the meaning of the muse and our whole creative purpose. Blake's eternity represents a higher, timeless, spaceless sphere, perhaps of pure consciousness or spirit. And this higher realm, Blake suggests, takes joy in what we time-bound beings can bring forth into physical existence.
Like the universe enjoys seeing potential become actual.
Exactly. It's as if, say, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony existed as pure potential in that higher sphere, without a body, just waiting, needing someone like Beethoven to hear it, grasp it, and manifest it on the material plane through notes and instruments. The muse whispers in the artist's ear, and if they're receptive, if they've done the work to be able to hear it, they bring it forth. It suggests a kind of divine collaboration, that these higher forces or potentials do exist and penetrate our earthly sphere, finding delight when we act as conduits for their expression.
That's a beautiful way to think about it. And that Homeric invocation he recites daily, what's the deeper meaning packed within that specific prayer? How does it serve as an actionable guide for any creative person?
He breaks it down brilliantly, piece by piece, revealing its profound wisdom for any creative endeavor, not just epic poetry.
Okay, let's hear it.
Divine poesy, goddess, daughter of Zeus. This emphasizes calling on a force from a holier plane, aiming high, recognizing the sacred nature of creative energy. Sustain for me this song. Crucially, it's not asking for brilliance or fame, but for persistence, for the strength just to keep going day after day. This song can apply to any venture, a novel, a startup, raising a family with intention.
Okay.
Odysseus's hero's journey, the subject of the song, is really every man's story. There's the initial crime or mistake that propels us out of complacency, the yearning for redemption, the long, arduous, untiring campaign to get home, which means getting back to God's grace, back to our true selves. He highlights the specific warning in the invocation against destroying for meat the oxen of the most exalted son. This translates directly to the prostituting of sacred gifts, selling out your true calling for mere commercial gain or fleeting approval. A huge temptation resistance uses.
Don't compromise the core vision.
Right. And finally, the artist's ultimate wish for their work. Make this tale live for us in all its many bearings, O Muse. Not just asking for it to be great, but for it to be alive, vibrant, and resonant in all its dimensions for the audience, for others. It's really a complete blueprint for a dedicated, meaningful, creative life packed into a few lines.
Wow, there's a lot in there. Okay, so we've acknowledged the higher realm, maybe even said a little prayer invocation. Now, the magic of action, making a start and keeping going. What happens, according to Pressfield, when we finally take that first committed step?
Goethe famously said, "Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, magic, and power in it. Begin it now." Pressfield echoes this strongly. He stresses that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too.
Providence moves too.
Yeah. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance. It's as if the universe itself conspires to help you once you make that sincere, unwavering commitment. Doors open, resources appear, allies show up.
Have you experienced that?
I think many people have. When they finally commit to something fully, it feels like magic sometimes.
And he connects this to the idea of angel midwives assisting in our creative birth. Tell us about that.
Yeah, drawing inspiration from sources like Wim Wenter's beautiful film Wings of Desire, and even ancient mystical traditions like the Kabbalah. Pressfield suggests that maybe angels are like agents of evolution. He imagines them hovering around us crying, "Grow, grow," and perhaps a super angel overseeing it all crying, "Evolve, evolve."
That's a lovely image.
It is. And when we finally make a start on our true work, when we commit, he says it's like a crack appears in the membrane. Angel midwives congregate around us. They assist as we give birth to ourselves, to that person we were born to be, to the one whose destiny was encoded in our soul. In essence, we get out of our own way, allowing these supportive forces to assist us in fulfilling our deepest potential.
So making the start invites the help, and that magic continues in the magic of keeping going, right? How do ideas and insights just seem to come to us when we're deep in the work?
Right. Pressfield describes taking a pocket tape recorder on hikes. Because, as his conscious mind empties out from the physical activity, another part of him starts talking, offering insights into his work in progress. Maybe changing a single word from leer to ogle for better nuance, or pointing out where he's repeated a phrase unintentionally.
Like an internal editor.
Exactly. This process of self-revision and self-correction, he notes, seems to be happening constantly, often unconsciously when we're engaged. He asks, who's doing this revising anyway? What force is yanking at our sleeves? He concludes it must be an invisible intelligence that's actually smarter than we are, organizing our work, providing ideas, steering us back on course when we stray. This is why artists often seem genuinely modest about their creations. They often feel they are just taking dictation from some other source.
It's not all coming from their conscious mind.
That's the feeling. And he notes, maybe a bit pointedly, that non-creative people sometimes seem to hate creative people out of a kind of jealousy, perhaps sensing this connection to something deeper. But he immediately emphasizes that we're all creative. We all have the same psyche. We all have access to this guiding intelligence if we do the work to tap into it.
He even shares some really powerful personal revelations through dreams that illustrate this invisible intelligence guiding him. First, there was the Largo dream. What happened there?
He recounts being a truck driver back in his 20s, feeling completely lost, self-destructive, failing at everything. He dreamt he was on a huge aircraft carrier that was somehow beached, stuck. And the captain, looking totally lost and overwhelmed, turned to him, Pressfield, the lowly deckhand, and asked desperately, "What the hell are we going to do, Largo?" Largo being his character's name in the dream.
Wow. The captain asking him.
Exactly. He woke up electrified, realizing the message. I was Largo. The power to take charge was in my hands. It was this incredibly powerful, direct message from his deeper self, basically priming him with the confidence and agency he needed to finally start turning his life around.
That's amazing. And then there was the eagle dream, which sounds even more profound in its message about unseen forces.
Yeah, this was later. While meditating out in the California oil fields where he was working, he dreamt an eagle landed on him, merged with him, and then they flew together. And as they flew, he could feel the solidness of the air. He had this epiphany in the dream that it was impossible for a bird to fall, that the air itself was as real and as solid as earth.
The solidness of air.
The eagle's message, as he interpreted it, was profound. Things that you think are nothing, as weightless as air, like thoughts, feelings, intentions, inspiration, are actually powerful, substantial forces, as real and as solid as earth. This dream powerfully reinforced the reality and the tangible power of these inner unseen forces, guiding him and showing him a deeper truth about the nature of reality and consciousness itself.
These stories really bring home the idea of a guiding intelligence. This brings us right to the core of the inner battle, doesn't it? Perhaps the ultimate deeper meaning behind all the struggles with resistance, the conflict between the ego versus the self. What are these two forces, according to Pressfield, and how do they contend within us?
He draws on the work of Tom Laughlin, a Jungian psychologist who worked with cancer patients. Laughlin observed something fascinating. When a person learns they have terminal cancer, the seat of their consciousness often seems to shift dramatically, almost instantly, from the ego to what Jungians call the self.
How so? What changes?
Suddenly, all the trivial concerns, the petty grievances, the status anxieties driven by the ego just disappear. And their unlived life, those forgotten passions, the neglected callings, the authentic self they suppressed, returns with this powerful, poignant urgency. Laughlin even suggested that sometimes disease could be seen as a kind of vengeance from our unlived lives, and that actively living them out could, in some cases, actually contribute to remission.
That's a profound idea. So for Pressfield, where do the ego and self reside in this creative battle we've been discussing, and how do their fundamental beliefs differ?
He places them squarely at the heart of the conflict. He believes angels make their home in the self, while resistance has its seat in the ego. The self, our deeper, authentic core, wants to create, to grow, to evolve. The ego, on the other hand, likes things just the way they are. It clings to the familiar, the status quo.
Okay, so what defines the ego's worldview?
Pressfield defines the ego as the part of our psyche that believes solely in material existence. For the ego, death is real and final. Time and space are absolute realities. Individuals are fundamentally separate and often in competition. Self-preservation is the paramount drive. And ultimately, there is no God, no higher power. These beliefs are practical, even necessary for navigating daily life, but they ultimately limit us from accessing our higher potential.
And the self's beliefs are essentially the opposite, representing a higher consciousness.
Exactly. The self believes death is an illusion, a transition perhaps. Time and space are relative illusions. All beings are fundamentally interconnected. The supreme emotion is love, not fear. And God or spirit or consciousness is all there is, the divine ground of being. The self is our deepest being, ideally united with this divine ground, incapable of falsehood, always urging us towards growth and speaking for our future potential.
So how do we access this self if the ego is usually running the show?
Well, Pressfield suggests that altering consciousness through methods like meditation, prayer, deep artistic immersion, dreams, or even sometimes, though riskily, intoxication aims precisely to demolish the ego, or at least quiet it down enough to get to the self. The key is to create space to hear that quieter, deeper voice within.
So the ego actively works against the self and our evolution. Why? Why does it resist our growth so fiercely?
Yes, it's the source of resistance.
Yeah.
The ego hates the self, Pressfield writes, because when we seat our consciousness in the self, we put the ego out of business.
It feels threatened.
Exactly.
Right.
The ego doesn't want us to evolve because evolution means it becomes less needed, less central, less in control. It particularly fears artists, innovators, prophets, anyone who dares to propel the race upward, who tries to, as James Joyce wrote, forge in the smithy of my soul the uncreated conscience of my race. This kind of evolution is perceived as life-threatening to the ego. So the ego produces resistance and attacks the awakening artist, seeking to shut down that inner revolution before it takes hold.
This leads us to what Pressfield calls the ultimate fear, the master fear. It's not just the fear of failure, he says, but something even more terrifying that holds us back.
Yes. is the fear that we will succeed.
The fear of success. That sounds paradoxical. Why would we fear success?
Because success, in this context, means succeeding at becoming our true selves. It's the fear of accessing the full power we secretly know we possess. The fear of actually becoming the person we are truly meant to be. This is terrifying, he argues, because it risks ejecting us from all the tribal inclusions his psyche is wired for.
We fear being different, being cast out.
Deep down, yes. We fear that if we truly live our authentic selves, follow our unique calling, we'll become monsters and monstrous in the eyes of our tribe, our family, our society. We'll be estranged from everything familiar, ending up totally alone on our true path. This is a profound, deeper meaning behind why we so often resist our own greatness and sabotage our own potential.
But there's a paradox here too, isn't there? He suggests that embracing your ideals, your true self, ultimately leads to greater connection, not isolation.
Absolutely. It's a crucial counterpoint. When you truly embrace your ideals and start becoming your authentic self, yes, you'll likely lose some friends or connections who aren't ready for your evolution, who are threatened by it. But Pressfield promises you will also find friends too, in places we never thought to look. And they're better friends, truer friends, people who resonate with your true self. More importantly, you become tapped into an unquenchable, undepletable, inexhaustible source of wisdom, consciousness, companionship from within, from that connection to the self. The initial fear of isolation gives way to a deeper, more authentic kind of connection, both internally and externally.
That's a very hopeful message. This connects directly to the idea of the authentic self and our unique destiny. Pressfield argues strongly against the idea that we're born as blank slates.
Yes, he completely rejects the tabula rasa idea. He aligns himself more with poets like Wordsworth, who wrote that we come trailing clouds of glory, implying we arrive here already imbued with a certain essence. Pressfield believes we come into this world with a highly refined and individuated soul.
So we have an inherent purpose.
That's his view. We're not born with unlimited choices, free to become absolutely anything. We can't be anything we want to be, he states controversially. We come into this world with a specific personal destiny. Your job, therefore, isn't to shape yourself into some external ideal, but to find out who we already are and become it. If you were born to paint, become a painter. If you were born to lead, then lead. Discover and embody the potential that's already encoded within you. This is incredibly motivating, I think. Knowing your path isn't something you have to invent from scratch, but something you uncover within yourself.
Find out who you are and do it on purpose, as Dolly Parton said.
Exactly.
Okay, this ties into another critical distinction Pressfield makes. The difference between territory versus hierarchy as two fundamentally different ways of defining ourselves and finding psychological security.
Yes, this is a really useful framework. He draws an analogy from the animal kingdom. Some animals, like wolves in a pack, define their security primarily by their rank within a social hierarchy. Others define it more by their connection to a specific territory, their personal home base, their den.
And humans operate in both modes.
We do. Yeah. But Pressfield argues that hierarchy is our default mode, constantly drilled into us by school. What's your GPA? By advertising, are you keeping up with the Joneses? By corporate culture, what's your job title? By society at large. We tend to define ourselves by others' opinions, by status, by external validation.
So, operating primarily from hierarchy is problematic, even fatal for creative work. Why?
Fatal, according to Pressfield. An individual defined hierarchically is always competing, always comparing. They evaluate their happiness based on their rank relative to others. They act towards others based on their perceived rank. And crucially, they evaluate every mood, every decision by its potential effect on their status in the eyes of others. But an artist, Pressfield insists, cannot look to others to validate his efforts or his calling.
Because the validation has to come from within.
Yes. Think of Van Gogh, who famously never sold a painting in his lifetime. To labor in the arts or any true calling for any reason other than love of the work itself is seen by Pressfield as a kind of prostitution. It's like Odysseus's men destroying for meat the oxen of the most exalted sun. The artist stuck in hierarchy is always looking up and looking down, comparing and competing, never looking within to their own authentic voice.
And this gives us his definition of a hack, right? Someone operating purely from hierarchy.
Exactly. He uses Robert McKee's sharp definition. A hack is a writer or any creator who second-guesses his audience. He constantly asks, what does the market want? What will sell? What will please the critics or the boss? Not, what's in my own heart? What story needs to be told through me? The hack panders, they calculate, they sell out their muse, which Pressfield defines as the best part of yourself, where your finest and only true work comes from.
He learned this the hard way himself, didn't he?
Yes, while starving as a screenwriter. He got this idea for a novel about golf, which eventually became The Legend of Bagger Vance. His agent thought it was career suicide. Who wants to read a novel about golf? But Pressfield said the muse just had him. The idea wouldn't let go. He trusted what I wanted, not what I thought would work. And against all odds, it succeeded beyond anyone's expectations, teaching him the immense power of working territorially. His conclusion: the artist can't do his work hierarchically. He has to work territorially.
Okay, so the territorial orientation is absolutely key for an artist and for implementing true creative freedom. How does one cultivate this? What defines a territory?
Yes. A territory isn't necessarily a physical place, though it often has one. It's primarily a psychological space. Think of Stevie Wonder at his piano, or Arnold Schwarzenegger in the gym, or Pressfield himself at his writing desk. A territory is a space, activity, or pursuit that provides sustenance purely from the engagement itself. It's a closed feedback loop, where the effort and love you put in directly return well-being and satisfaction to you, without needing any external input or validation.
So the reward is in the doing.
Precisely. A territory is claimed alone, through your own initiative, and it's claimed by work, by showing up and engaging. And crucially, Pressfield emphasizes, a territory returns exactly what you put in. A territory never devalues. A territory never crashes. Unlike the stock market or social status, the value you derive from your territory is stable and comes directly from your own efforts. It's pure, unadulterated, intrinsic motivation.
And the artist, he suggests, is like a mother in this territorial sense, a vehicle for creation.
Yes, the act of creation is fundamentally territorial. Just as a mother bears and nurtures a child within her own body, the artist contains a new life, a new idea, a new form, seeking to be born into the world through them. They are vehicles, not originators in this view. When the artist works territorially, they revere heaven, aligning themselves with those mysterious forces seeking to bring forth new life and potential into the world. They do their work for its own sake, not for external gain or recognition.
Okay, so how can we, the listeners, test our own orientation? How can we figure out if we're operating primarily from hierarchy or territory in a particular area of our lives to understand our deeper motivation?
Pressfield offers two really powerful, very practical self-awareness tests. These are great implementation tools. First test: if I were feeling really anxious right now, what would I instinctively do?
Okay.
If your first impulse is to call 6 friends, frantically seeking reassurance and external validation, you're likely operating hierarchically in that moment. If your impulse is to head straight to your studio, your gym, your writing desk, your garden, whatever your territory is seeking internal solace, focus, and expression through the work itself, then you're likely operating territorially.
That's a very clear distinction. What's the second test?
Second test: if I were the last person on earth, would I still do this?
Wow. Okay.
If your motivation comes purely from within the work itself, if you'd still show up at the studio, write that poem, practice that instrument, even if there was absolutely no one left to impress or applaud, then you know your motivation is truly territorial. It comes from the love of the doing, not the potential rewards.
Those are powerful questions to ask yourself. And this territorial focus leads to what he calls the supreme virtue for the artist, drawing inspiration from the Spartans.
Yes, he adapts the famous code of the Spartan king Leonidas. For the Spartans facing overwhelming odds at Thermopylae, the supreme virtue was contempt for death. Pressfield argues that for artists facing resistance and potential failure, the supreme virtue is contempt for failure.
Don't fear failure.
More than that, have contempt for it. By confining your attention entirely to the work itself and its demands acting territorially, you strip the power away from the external foe, from the fear of judgment, from the possibility of flopping. You simply do the work. The outcome is secondary.
And the ultimate spiritual insight for doing this work, the concept of the fruits of our labor. This feels like a culmination of everything we've discussed.
It truly is. He returns to that profound line from the Bhagavad Gita: we have a right only to our labor, not to the fruits of our labor. We must do our work for its own sake, for the intrinsic joy of creation, for the engagement with the process, not for the potential rewards like fortune, fame, or applause. That's acting territorially.
But then he offers a third way, beyond hierarchy and territory.
Yes, the deepest way, he suggests, is to do the work and give it to him, to do it as an offering to God or the muse or the universe or your higher self, however you conceive of that higher power. In this mode, we become servants of the mystery, humble agents of the infinite, helping to bring into material existence that which doesn't yet exist but seeks to be born. This, Pressfield concludes, is not only a form of meditation, but perhaps the supreme species of spiritual devotion.
Wow, That elevates the creative act significantly. So, in the end, after this incredibly deep dive into the war of art, what is the final portrait of the artist that Pressfield paints? What is the deeper meaning of their role, their purpose in the world?
He sees the artist fundamentally as a servant of that intention, those angels, that muse we talked about. The real enemy isn't critics or the marketplace. It's the small-time ego, which begets resistance, which is the dragon that guards the gold of our creative potential. The artist, therefore, must be a warrior, yes, but a humble warrior, dedicated in service, facilitating creations that come through them, not necessarily originating from them. They strive to be willing and skilled instruments of the gods and goddesses they serve. It's about channeling, collaborating with the unseen, not controlling everything from the ego.
And finally, he leaves us with this powerful, almost demanding call to action regarding our unique gift and why it's so crucially important that we don't hold back, that we share it with the world.
Yes, he states a profound, maybe even intimidating truth. If you were meant to cure cancer, or write a symphony, or crack a cold fusion, and you don't do it, you not only hurt yourself, even destroy yourself. You hurt your children, you hurt me, you hurt the planet.
That's a huge burden of responsibility, but also an incredible affirmation of our individual purpose and interconnectedness.
It really is. Our individual creative work, our unique contribution, actually impacts everyone, whether we realize it or not. He continues, "You shame the angels who watch over you, and you spite the Almighty, who created you, and only you, with your unique gifts, for the sole purpose of nudging the human race 1 millimeter farther along its path back to God."
Wow. No pressure then.
Oh, right.
Okay.
But his final conclusion is one of encouragement. Creative work is not a selfish act or a bid for attention. It's a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got.
That's a powerful place to end. We've really unpacked the formidable foe that is resistance, haven't we? We've explored the disciplined mindset of the professional, and we've glimpsed these higher realms of inspiration and self-realization that Pressfield argues are open to all of us if we dare to engage. The battle is internal, clearly, but the rewards, he suggests, are universal, impacting not just us, but potentially the entire world. And this deep dive, it really wasn't just about understanding a book, was it? It was about focusing on how to implement its profound lessons. We aim to make the journey easy and fun to comprehend, to uncover some of those deeper meanings, and hopefully leave you feeling enlightened and motivated to embark on or maybe recommit to your own creative journey.
So after hearing all this, what stands out to you, the listener? You now recognize resistance's many sneaky faces. You know that the fear you feel about pursuing your deepest calling isn't designed to turn back.
No, it's that infallible compass.
Exactly. Pointing you precisely towards what you must do.
So what is that one thing, that one project, that one calling, that one unlived life your soul is aching to bring forth? Don't cheat us, don't cheat yourself, of your contribution. The stage is set. The battle plan is clear. Now, as Pressfield says, give us what you've got.